The cube root of 27 is 3, since 3 times 3 times 3 is equal to 27. In other words, to find the cube root of 27, I'm asking myself what used as a factor 3 times will give me 27. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. Therefore, the cube root of 27 is 3. 3 is one of 3 equal factors whose product is 27. The cube root of -8 is equal to -2. Whereas I'm saying what uses a factor 3 times gives -8. If I multiply -2 times -2 times -2, I get -8. A -2 times a -2 is a +4. A +4 times a -2 is -8. So since -2 used as a factor 3 times gives me -8, the cube root of -8 is -2. Now 16 has 2 fourth roots. So there's 2 fourth roots of 16. We know that 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 would be 16. So let me show you that. Root of 16 is 2, since 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. The fourth root of 16 is also -2, because -2 times -2 is +4. +4 times -2 is -8. -8 times -2 is +16. So 16 has 2 fourth roots, a +2 and a -2. This symbol denotes the negative fourth root of 16. So the negative fourth root of 16 is -2. Well, what's the fourth root of 1296? Well, one needs to find something which used as a factor 4 times will give 1296. So you've got something that used as a factor 4 times will give you 1296. But the only way of doing that is by guessing. Well, you might guess a few numbers, but I've already told you which one works, and the one that works is 6. So you need to verify on your calculator that 6 times 6 times 6 times 6 is indeed 1296. Well, let's check that. We need to do 6 times 6 equals 36. So I've used 6 as a factor 2 times. Times 6 equals 216. I've used 6 as a factor 3 times. Times 6 equals 1296. So I use 6 as a factor 4 times. I get 1296. So the fourth root of 1296 is 6. What about the fourth root of -16? Well, this is not real. I would have to find something used as a factor 4 times to give me a -16. Well, it can't be a positive number, because if I use a positive number as a factor 4 times, I'm going to get a positive answer. It can't be a negative number, because if I use a negative as a factor 4 times, I'm going to get a positive number. Because if I have a negative as a factor 4 times, I've got a negative times a negative, which is positive, times a negative, which is negative, times a negative, which is positive. So anytime I use a negative as a factor 4 times, I'm going to get a positive. It is impossible to use either a positive or a negative as a factor 4 times and get a negative. So therefore, the fourth root of a -16 is not real. In fact, you need to know this note. I'm going to put a star on this note telling you to memorize it and put it on your study sheet. The nth root of x is not real if x is negative and n is even. So the nth root of x is not real if x is negative and n is even. Now I'm ready to give you more notation. Now this is simply notation that you need to memorize. Put it on your study sheet so you can become familiar with it. X to the 1 over n is the same as the nth root of x. So the fractional exponent 1 over n is the same as taking the nth root. So that's what it means. If you see a fractional exponent, it means to take that root, the nth root. Whatever your denominator is, it tells you the root to take. So looking at example, 9 to the 1/2. Well, this tells me to take the square root of 9. If there's no index written, it's understood to be 2. So I wrote the 2 in to show you. But the denominator tells you the root you're taking. So 9 to the 1/2 is the same as the square root of 9. The square root of 9 is 3. 32 to the 1/5 is the 5th root of 32. Whereas now what you've got to do is to come up with something used as the factor 5 times to give 32. Think, what used as a factor 5 times will give 32? Well, you might guess 3. Let's see if 3 would work. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 27 times 3 is 81. Okay, I'm already up to 81, which is too big, and I've only used 4. Since 3 was too big, let's guess 2. And I need something used as a factor 5 times to give 32. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. So 2 used as a factor 5 times gives 32. So therefore we have 32 to the 1/5 is the 5th root of 32, which is 2. Negative 1,000 to the 1/3. The 1/3 tells me to take the cube root of a negative 1,000. Now I've got to find something used as a factor 3 times to give me negative 1,000. The answer is negative 10. A negative 10 times a negative 10 is 100. 100 times a negative 10 is negative 1,000. So since I can use negative 10 as a factor 3 times to get negative 1,000, the cube root of a negative 1,000 is negative 10. A negative 25 to the 1/2 is the same as the square root of negative 25. Here we have a negative number under the square root. We have an even index. If you have a negative number with an even index, it is not real. One cannot take the nth root of a negative number when n is even. That's one of the things I told you to memorize just a few minutes ago. So the square root of a negative 25 is not real. One cannot take the square root of a negative number within the real number system. Now finally we're ready to get to the general case.